Hi and welcome to the channel. We have another yin practice today. Today's practice is centered around the spleen and stomach meridians. This practice is exceptionally helpful if you are having any issues with indigestion. Also, emotionally, it can aid if you are having a tendency to be extra worrisome, or maybe you're losing some of your focus or creativity. These movements and asanas can be especially helpful in opening up that energetic pathway to help clearing out some of that stagnation within our body. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start with a gentle breathing exercise. I suggest coming into a hero pose. And to make it more comfortable, since we will be holding this for a little bit longer, separate the legs slightly and just sit back onto a block or maybe onto a pillow. From here, bring the knees together as closely as is comfortable so that you're not feeling anything sharp. And then the feet are resting on the outside of that pillow or block. From here, you can take the hands just to rest gently onto the top of the legs. And we'll start simply by breathing normally. I will go ahead and walk you through our breathing exercise. In this exercise, we're going to envision a ball of white light. And if you take your hands to your navel and then lower them maybe about 2 inches or so just below the navel, we'll start at that chakra. In that point, that center of light, we will do our breathing exercise and vision that center of light starting at the Savasana chakra just below the navel, and we'll picture that light traveling down the midline of the body as it comes underneath and then back up to the tailbone, following that light, rising up along the spine, in between the shoulders, the back of the neck, until it travels again through the midline, coming up to the crown of the head, and then we come to the top of our inhale, and it reaches in between the eyebrows. We'll pause here for a moment, and then on an exhale, we will slowly root down, follow that midline as it comes through our heart center, goes past the navel and returns back to our Svadhisthana chakra, to our beginning point. When you are ready, take a nice inhale in. Exhale, release everything out. And on our next inhale, let's start by picturing that bright ball of light just below the navel. Inhale that ball of light as it travels down and then comes back up through the backside of the body, slowly up the spine. Feel it travel, the warmth of it reaching the back of the neck, through the back of the head, coming across the crown of the head until it pauses in between the eyes as we hold the top of the inhale for 1, 2. On a release, we'll exhale. Feel that ball of light traveling down the throat, through the center line of the body, heart center, passing through the lungs, the stomach, past the navel, and back to where we began. Inhale. Feel that energetic pathway traveling down. Picture the bright light coming back up through the back of the spine, slowly making its way up behind the head. Feel the warmth reaching the crown of the head, reaching the crown a little taller, coming down through the forehead, culminating in between the eyebrows, pausing, holding the top of the inhale, and then exhale. The light travels down, across the throat, through the center of the body, slowly reaching that point just below the navel. We'll take one more round on an inhale. Allow that white light to travel down, passing underneath the tailbone, rising up as it climbs each vertebrae. Feeling it cross the back of the head, traveling over the top, the crown of the head, until it reaches that center focal point in between the eyebrows, pausing, holding the inhale for 1 and 2. Exhale. Release that ball of light down through the center of the body, maybe pausing as it comes through heart center, shining bright, feeling it expand out through the body. And allow it to slowly lower back past the navel toward our Savasana chakra. From here, relax. Allow the breath to return to normal. Slowly start to blink open the eyes. From here, we'll shift forward, removing the block, setting it aside in case we need it later. We'll come through a tabletop and then lower ourselves down towards Sphinx. So hips lower towards the mat. The feet are open wide to make some space for the low back, especially if this is early in the morning. We could be a little bit stiff in that area. The elbows are just in front of the shoulders so that we have more space there as well. And then have the forearms out at a slight diagonal with the fingers pointing towards the top of the mat. From here, lift the chest. Feel the shoulders sink down. Make space between the shoulders and the ears. And slightly press the top of the feet into the mat. As I began explaining, this sequence is built with movements centered around the spleen and the stomach organs and those meridians. In Chinese medicine, it's focused less around the specific organs and more about the energetic pathways and the functioning relationships inside the body. So as we do some of our movements today, you'll find that we are focused more on hip extension and spinal extension. Also, we will have twists and deep forward bends to encourage compression of the internal organs, a kind of acupressure to create movement along those energetic pathways. The spleen's function in the body is as a transportation and distribution site, if you want to think of it that way. The spleen helps move blood throughout the body in conjunction with the stomach. It also provides nourishment. So if we find stagnation throughout those channels and throughout those pathways, we may find ourselves becoming overcome with indigestion, perhaps bloating. In turn, the mind can sense this lack of nourishment, and this can cause worry or anxiety, a lack of focus, And that lack of focus can also diminish our creativity. From your Sphinx pose, go ahead and lower down slightly so that the hands are just in front of the shoulders. We're going to push back and come into a child's pose just for a moment. The knees can be widely separated here, making space for yourself to settle in. And when you're ready, we're going to push up, come through a tabletop. And just for a moment, we're going to push into a downward facing dog, only using this as a transition pose in order to step that left foot up and bring the left knee into a center line. And then take the right knee, have it crossing over the top of the left shin, and we'll sink the hips back as we come into our shoelace pose. So now the hips are resting in between the ankles. The left knee is stacked just about on top of the right. It doesn't need to be perfect. It can totally be lifted and have plenty of space there as long as you find comfort in that pose, but still coming just slightly to an edge so you are feeling that into the hips and the outer sides of the hips. From here in our shoelace pose, we are going to start one of those twists I talked about. So we'll take that right hand to the outside of the left knee and draw the left hand behind us. Holding the twist here, inhale and exhale, maybe coming into the twist a little bit deeper. Not forcing anything here in our yin practice. We just allow ourselves to sink into the pose. Give the muscles some time to relax and to move deeply into it. If you give the muscles a little bit time to find their space and to create an opening, you'll get deeper into the joints, deeper into the fascia. When you're ready, let's release just the twist, coming back to face the front of the mat, keeping our shoelace shape with our legs. And from here, we'll start to walk the hands forward. Bending from the hips until you reach a point where the upper body just curves and relaxes over the tops of the legs. Maybe the forearms come to the mat, or you could also have a couple of blocks underneath you to bring the earth a little bit closer, and you can feel more grounding into your shape. With every inhale, expand. And with every exhale, feel yourself release and deepen further into the fold. Again, with this deep fold, we are creating a compression into those internal organs, into the spleen. The spleen is just about a 4-inch size organ that is just sitting to the behind and left of the stomach. And we're also creating this compression into the stomach as well. When we start to rise up, please push into the mat with your hands and do so with care and with kindness for the body as we start to return back to an upright position. Bring the hands back behind you and just shift back onto the hips. Start to move the feet out in front of you, unravel the legs, and we're going to just take them from side to side in a nice little windshield wiper motion. One more time, left to right. And then from here, let's cross the ankles. We'll roll through a tabletop. Push back into a downward facing dog. Just for a moment, only using this as a transition. This time stepping the right knee up and forward, taking it in between the hands, and the left knee goes and crosses over the top of the left shin. So now the left knee is on the bottom, the right knee is stacked on top for our shoelace pose on the opposite side. Settle yourself in so that you feel that the weight is evenly balanced between the two sit bones, and so we're not leaning from one side more than the other. From here, we'll start to sit nice and tall, and then we'll begin with our lovely twist as we take the left hand on the outside of the right knee. Bring the right hand behind us and maybe gaze behind the right shoulder. Feel free to close the eyes here and continue to breathe. There's a natural tendency to hold our breath and twist. Use your breath to inhale and expand throughout the spine. Exhale. Maybe take the twist a little bit deeper. Encourage the spine and the back body to open with every breath. On the next inhale, we'll slowly release the twist. Come back to gaze towards the top of the mat. Hands can start to walk out in front of you as you bend at the hips. Walk yourself out forward, laying the torso over the top of the legs. The spine starts to round. Maybe the forearms come to the mat or to some blocks. And go ahead and relax into this pose. Keep breathing. Feel the breath traveling down the spine. Feel it nourish everything. Maybe you bring that ball of light back and feel that ball of light traveling down the spine, creating warmth. Feeling the vast universe that is inside your body expand with every inhale. Sense yourself melting down into the mat more with every exhale. The neck releases, the head is heavy. Again, as we start to rise out of this pose, do so slowly and with care, as we are doing some very deep openings into the muscles. There may be some laxity in the muscles as far as support when we come out, so it's good to use the upper body to help lift ourselves out. Hands can come behind the hips, start to shift back, unravel the legs. Once more, we'll take those windshield wipers, starting in whatever direction feels good for you. Just allowing the blood flow, that nourishment, that energy to release back through the lower body. And again, we'll cross the ankles, come through our tabletop position, pushing back into a downward facing dog. You can take an inhale here, exhale it out. Then on the next inhale, we'll step the left foot up and in between the hands. And we'll come into our dragon pose. So for dragon, this time the knee is in between the hands, and you can certainly have blocks underneath your hands if you like, but we're going to keep the knee in between for now until we transition to our next version of dragon. And we'll just hold here in this baby dragon. Sinking into that left front hip. Maybe closing the eyes. Feeling the stretch into the back leg, in the front of that right quad. Again, encouraging that extension of the hip on the right side. Feel free to continue here in your version of your baby dragon. If you would like to take it to a low flying dragon, walk that left foot out just to the outside of the left hand, and then maybe lower onto the forearms. An alternate or a kind of a middle ground would be to take the blocks and then lower your forearms onto blocks. It's kind of a happy medium to be at if you find that you aren't quite coming to your edge by staying up on your hands, and yet the forearms do not quite reach the mat yet. This is a wonderful place to be. And I would suggest either the lowest position of your blocks or the middle position. Avoid the highest part, as that would be rather unstable. Holding here in our baby dragon. Our low flying dragon. Your version, whatever works for you. Finding the edge, remaining in stillness. Do your best to avoid fidgeting. Always return to the breath. From our low flying dragon or baby dragon, if you were up higher, we'll return to our hands and then come into our bowing dragon. So if you are familiar with vinyasa flow, bowing dragon is essentially a half splits. So we'll come and push back, straightening that left front knee. So now the toes are pointed up, the front foot is flexed. And we'll allow the front body to just drape over that front left leg. The biggest difference here with our yin version of bowing dragon versus half splits, allow yourself to round over that front leg. You can still have a slight bend in the knee if that works for you, as long as you are still feeling a stretch into the back of the leg. But allow yourself to round. If you were in a vinyasa class, they would most likely encourage a nice flat back to really get a greater deepening into the back of the leg. But here we're going to hold this for a bit longer than we would in a vinyasa, giving ourselves space and time to breathe and to open. And when you are ready, slowly shift forward, pushing the weight into the hands, tucking the back toes, stepping that left foot back as we come into a downward facing dog. In your downward facing dog, go ahead and paddle out the feet just for a moment. Maybe shift the hips from left to right as you feel some of the blood flow returning into that left leg. When you're ready, we'll take that dragon series onto the right side, stepping the right foot up and in between the hands. Untuck the back toes. From here, lift the chest up. Allow the hips to sink down. Again, reach for those blocks for support. Focusing on the extension into that left hip. And as we work on the left versus the right side of the body, it's natural to notice any differences from one side of the body to the other. Without any judgment, just make notice of the differences and use your breath to help yourself open and expand. As you continue to work in your yin practice or your yoga practice, you will find that over time, the sides of the body may start to even out. But even then, there will always be differences, and there will always be changes every day in our body. From our baby dragon, if you want to attempt to lower down on the right side of the body, again, walk that right foot out just to the outside of the right hand. And from here, you can lower onto the forearms or forearms onto a pair of blocks. Feel your way into the pose. Allow the hips to remain heavy. Once you find your version of the pose, return to stillness. We'll hold here for 5 more breaths. And if you were lowered down onto your forearms, start to bring yourself up back onto your hands. Walk that right foot back in towards center line, and we'll shift back onto the left knee and start to straighten the right leg for our bowing dragon. Pointing the toes up towards the sky and flexing the foot, allowing the torso just to round over the top of that right leg. On the next inhale, let's start to bend into that right front knee. Tuck the back toes. We'll push back into a downward facing dog to give our time to that right leg. Maybe just to walk it out a little bit and feel everything start to flow throughout the lower body. And when you are satisfied, let's lower the knees towards the mat. We'll go ahead and kick the feet out from the side and then come to lay slowly onto our backs. We'll start to close out our practice with just a couple of reclined twists. So as you come onto your backs, extend the legs out long. And from here, let's go ahead and bend that left knee in. We're going to push into the mat with that left foot, lift the hips up just slightly, just enough so we can offset the hips over towards the left, about 2 inches. The right leg remains long, and from here, let's take that left leg and just allow it to fall over the center of the body. The left arm can come out to a T shape or to a cactus arm, whichever works for you today. And use the weight of the right hand, maybe bring it to the outside of that left thigh to encourage the twist across the center of the body. I like to leave the gaze as optional to my students, whether you look up towards the sky or gaze towards the left extended hand. Whatever feels best for you. I find a neutral position feels much more accommodating to my neck. And when you're ready, we'll slowly come back to center, releasing that left leg, shifting the hips, extending the leg out long. Again, finding that neutral position, realigning the body before we set up on the opposite side, this time drawing the right knee in, pressing the right sole of the foot into the mat so we can lift the hips up just an inch or two, and then draw them over towards the right. This aids us in keeping the spine in alignment, so it's a nice straight line as we let that right knee drop and then come over the left side of the body. The right arm, again, take that into a T shape or into your cactus arms and breathe. start to unravel. Drawing the right leg back, lifting the hips up so that you realign the body, extending both of the legs out long, and then bringing the hands and arms to your sides as we stop here for our final moments in Savasana. Allowing everything to settle. Feeling that white energy radiating out from the entire body. Feeling the warmth and the energy sparked within the internal organs. Starting up from that point in between the eyes, emanating through heart center, feeling the warmth created in the belly and throughout the legs and the lower body. I encourage you to stay in Shavasana as long as you feel is necessary for you today. You can just allow the video to keep playing. Whenever you are ready, you can slowly draw the feet in, bending the knees, maybe rolling over onto one side to softly push yourself up to a seated position. Once you're in your seated position, let's lift the arms up to the sky. You may draw the hands down through heart center with a slight tuck of the chin. As always, I thank you for coming to this practice and joining me in your yin yoga journey. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Make it a great one. Bye.